This season of the OWCS brought us a new age of Chinese Overwatch. With the game getting unbanned in China, with the NetEase agreement renewed, it has brought us Weibo, otherwise known as Once Again, winning every single match, and, well, most other teams being pretty terrible. Oh, and you can't forget about the scuffed tournament format that resulted in the great throw-off between Rock and Blade. As we neared the end of the season, though, things started to shift, and for the first time, teams began to challenge the kings of China, Weibo Gaming, and the lower teams were able to put up a fight against the number 2 and number 3 teams, those teams being Rock Esports and Team CC. Basically, a region once full of 3-0 stomps had all of a sudden become competitive, and this match between Rock Esports and Milk Tea is one of the best examples of this shift in China. Milk Tea, the team we'll be looking at today, are a roster without a sponsor, with 4 Chinese players as well as Rek from Hong Kong. They had a bit of a rough stage, placing 5th in the regular season. Enough to get themselves to the playoffs, but they'd be starting in the lower bracket. Meanwhile, Rock had earned the 2nd seed in the regular season after defeating Team CC 3-2. Rock are a roster owned by a Saudi org with 2 Korean imports, Belarus on tank, as well as Flora, who was formerly on Zeta Division. Rock got knocked down into the lower bracket after they lost a 5-map rematch against Team CC, thus why they are up against Milk Tea. This match between Milk Tea and Rock was expected to be a quick 3-0 for Rock, but that didn't happen, since today's video will be starting on the 5th and final map between these teams, which also means both teams made it to match point since it's a 1-to-3 series. The current meta is interesting because there are a lot of very different approaches teams take depending on what heroes they are more comfortable playing. One of the common options and types of teams in the current meta are Zarya teams. Some teams that love Zarya compositions include Genji, Space Station Gaming, and our subject for today, Milk Tea. Now, Rock are not big fans of Zarya. They'll avoid playing her whenever possible since it doesn't play to Belarus's strengths as a tank player. For this final map though, Rock won't be able to ban the Zarya composition out since Milk Tea have the security of not only the map pick, but also the first ban. Before we look at the bans and explain the Rialto map pick from Milk Tea, let's talk a bit about why Zarya is even played in the first place right now. Zarya has struggled to find relevancy in Overwatch 2 because she has one key weakness: movement, and her bubbles don't adequately make up for that weakness. The easiest way to deal with the Zarya was simply to run her down and disregard the bubbles completely. One of the types of compositions that are used to achieve this are Sim Bastion comps. Al-Qudsiya are one of the teams that have used these compositions to great success against some Zarya teams, especially early on before teams realized Zarya's full potential. Bastion Sim comps use TPs to move a Bastion in turret form around, and the Bastion will outright shred the Zarya and her bubbles. This is one of the cases where shooting Zarya's bubbles on purpose is the right play, since a charged Zarya can't do much if she's, dead. Zarya is particularly susceptible to getting run down early on in the fight due to the nature of her kit. She's a bit slow in terms of value over the course of the fight because of her reliance on beam charge. Zarya's first 2 bubbles are what we call her first bubble rotation, and those bubbles are usually necessary for building charge, and then on the second bubble rotation, Zarya can actually use her bubbles to push forward and help herself a bit more, as well as, deal real damage and get real value. So in this example, what Al-Qudsiya are doing with this Bastion Sim composition is trying to crush Virtus Pro before Vistola Zarya can reach that second rotation of bubbles. It's difficult for Vistola to really do anything about this since Zarya doesn't have any horizontal movement abilities to kite Qudsiya's engage. Even if Virtus Pro hadn't banned Lucio and could run him, it would still be difficult to keep Vistola alive. Now, these issues with Zarya are still present, but teams have gotten better at using Zarya, and buffs to a certain other hero really pushed Zarya into the meta. That hero is Reaper. Now, it can be argued that without Reaper, we probably wouldn't be seeing any Zarya right now, and the same can be argued vice versa. Zarya and Reaper have a unique dynamic of reliance upon one another, and on their own, they're pretty mid heroes and much more exploitable and counterable at the professional level in particular. But the moment you put them together, they practically double their potential. A synergy so strong that the heroes have to be balanced around that specific synergy rather than their individual performances. Now, with all of this in mind, let's get back into the match, because it's Milk Tea's map pick for the 5th and final map. Their choice, Rialto. Now, Rialto is a pretty strong D.Va map and can be okay for Ramattra, but it is also a particularly strong Zarya map, especially on the 2nd and 3rd points. Escort maps tend to be pretty dive-oriented, so Rialto is one of those maps that allows you to force Brawl a bit easier, so it makes for a fair choice. Throughout this series, Rock had already used their bans on Kiriko, Reaper, and Lucio, 3 key components that are typically seen in Zarya compositions. The one hero they didn't ban was Zarya herself, but Milk Tea have an easy workaround. They banned Winston in order to not only eliminate Belisaria's best hero, but also protect Zarya from being banned out. For reference, under OWCS rules, only one hero of each hero type can be banned, so Rock can now only ban a DPS or support hero. Their choice was simply Cassidy, likely to try and make forcing the Ball Pharah composition they would be starting on easier. Milk Tea get their Zarya, but they do actually have a bit of an interesting adaptation in their composition, which is Unknown opting for Wu Yang. Generally, Lucio is just better in the Zarya compositions for giving your Zarya some form of horizontal movement and freedom, as well as having beat in your ult rotation. But Wu Yang was likely chosen because he was 1, very popular at the time, even if he wasn't actually that strong, and 2, Rialto has a bit more emphasis on high grounds and vertical movement, and Rock wouldn't be mirroring the composition immediately, so Milk Tea wanted to opt for a slower, pokier kind of a brawl composition. The Wu Yang is actually decently good against the Ball Pharah you'll see Rock roll out on, but spoiler, Rock will swap off of this eventually, and Unknown stays Wu Yang, so don't be too surprised when that does happen. The round begins with Milk Tea on attack. This first point will be a bit of a challenge for the Zarya composition, especially up against Jinmu's Pharah, so the key is to take it slow and be patient. One bonus Milk Tea have in this matchup is that ball compositions aren't very good at taking fast fights, so Rek on Zarya has plenty of time to use his first bubble rotation to gain charge. Milk Tea began with Rek bubbling Eileen to TP, teleport up to the high ground, and clear the space. Rock are just poking this for ult charge. On Rialto, you're never really holding that first corner and high ground. The next corner and choke are much harder to break and allow for Fami's Ana and Lengsa's Wu Yang to play further back and keep their distance from the Reaper Zarya. Milk Tea push the cart to the corner, and their next engage comes in the form of another Reaper TP into a bubble from Rek. This results in a bit more Zarya charge, which is great for Rek, and these small engages that are meant to clear spaces or gain charge are known as soft engages or soft hits. I'll be calling them that from now on in this video, just so you know what I'm talking about. Soft hits are great for fighting for space and long-term win cons like Zarya charge, rather than trying to immediately force a kill. Rek's next bubbles don't result in as much. He bubbles Eileen's Reaper again while peeking the doorway, but he doesn't get much charge. Rek then panic bubbles his backline after Rock went for a hit. This was a mistake though, since Rock's backline are out of LOS, line of sight, and cannot follow up on the hit. That bubble got 0 as well. Milk Tea start from 0 again, stabilizing inside of the room before heading out again for another hit. It begins with a bubble onto Eileen that doesn't find any charge, but Eileen does get in behind with a TP, so he's set up on the backline of Rock. Rek keeps himself and his backline alive through a ball plus tracer hit with 2 bubbles, both of which get a good amount of value. I really don't like these hits from Rock since they really shouldn't go for hits outside of the LOS of their Ana and Wu Yang who can help finish kills. I think this is greedy from them and was free charge for Rek. Instead, Rock should have really switched their focus to Eileen's Reaper, who has no cooldowns on their flank. To help Eileen on his little adventure, Recall on Kiriko makes a risky but clever decision to TP in behind and assist directly. Milk Tea now have 2 players in behind, and Rock need to decide which group they will focus on. Jinmu initially looks to mark the Reaper Kiriko flank, but then he kinda second guesses that decision and backtracks to go after the core of Milk Tea. Jinmu manages to take down Insane on Freya, who honestly just got really greedy trying to walk out on his own like that. Eileen finds a trade though, TPing up to the high ground, clearing and eliminating Fami's Ana. In this moment, Milk Tea can pretty much sandwich Rock from the flank and the main choke, making it very difficult for Rock to stabilize. Eileen looks at Jinmu's Pharah next and gets assistance from Rek in the form of a bubble. Rek finishes the kill, now high charge, and this pretty much puts an end to this fight. Flora still tries to go for a Pulse Bomb on Recall's Kiriko for some reason, and it missed. A little silly, but even sillier is whatever the hell this title blast was from Unknown. Like, hello? Are we awake? We are on map 5 Unknown. Wake up! Wake up! Wake up! Fat fingering an ultimate that requires 2 inputs on map 5 with the potential to upset a strong team like Rock is definitely a new one. Reminds me a little bit of the incident but that incident is for another day. Rock do a bit of casual staggering, with Jinmu's Pharah playing a bit too close, allowing Recall's Kiriko to climb up to the high ground and assassinate him. Recall TP's back to throw down the Kitsune and close out the point for Milk Tea, denying Rock any chance to take a real fight. What makes this worse is that Fami nanojaxes in an attempt to keep Bellisria's ball alive, so yeah, there goes the nano. That isn't all bad though, since the ball Ana composition isn't great past first point, so a swap was in order either way. Milk Tea's map pick and bans really paid off, since they've now entered a Zarya mirror. Rock are forced onto essentially the same composition, the only difference being Tracer for Rock, while Milk Tea have Freya. My personal take is that the Freya was fine into ball, but not as good in the mirror, so Insane will kind of get bullied here by Rock's Reaper and Tracer, which is a bit of a concern for Milk Tea. The second point begins with Milk Tea making great cart progress. Rock are at a major disadvantage in terms of ultimates. They need to catch up, so they need to play slow and can't contest at first. Lengsa opens the fight for Rock by throwing Tidal Blast on Flora's Tracer. Recall's Kiriko is able to foil Flora's plans yet again with a Suzu onto Unknown with perfect timing. Rock pushed forward but were unable to secure a kill onto Rek, who fell low, but was able to live. Now it's Milk Tea's turn in this fight. Rek bubbles Eileen for a soft hit, and this results in some pretty solid damage onto Bellisria's Zarya. Milk Tea are also getting close to having 5 ultimates in the bank, which is a lot to work with here. Okay, this is particularly funny, but at the same time, Flora comes in for a Pulse Bomb, and the target was 100% Insane's Freya, but at the exact moment Flora goes for this Pulse, Recall TP's in and catches it, making for an easy Suzu on himself to deny the Pulse entirely. Recall also manages to force Flora's Recall with a kunai hit. Recall on Kiriko is not letting Flora do anything. Imagine leaving Zeta Division in Korea to join Rock thinking you'd have a decently easy path to LAN and could farm China as a tier 1 Korean DPS player, only for a Chinese contenders player who didn't even play OWCS stages 1 and 2 to deny you every step of the way. You can remove Flora from Zeta, but you can never remove the Zeta from Flora. Although Milk Tea do have a massive advantage in this moment, they kind of fumble it. Insane's Bola shot, which isn't too important, doesn't end up landing on Jinmu's Reaper, who was able to wraith away. Rek bubbles Eileen's Reaper for a Death Blossom engage that Rock managed to avoid with the help of a Suzu from Fami, and then Eileen dies just before the ultimate ends, unable to use Wraith in time. Insane trades Fami, but Jinmu trades Insane right back, and then Flora on Tracer finally finds a kill on a backline target, that being a Nose Wuyang. This puts an end to the fight for Milk Tea, but I want to talk about that fight because ult usage plays a massive role in this mirror matchup, and the ult usage from Milk Tea was outright bad. Using Death Blossom as a fight opener is not unheard of, and it can work decently well, but you also have to remember that it often won't find kills because the opponent will have all of their bubbles and their Suzu at the ready to defend against it. Instead of using Blossom first, I personally feel that Milk Tea should have played to build Recall's Kitsune, which was close to being charged ahead of Fami's Kitsune. This opener might force cooldowns like Suzu or Bubbles, which would be perfect for finishing off the fight with a grab from Rek's Zarya that Bellisria wouldn't be able to match, or a Death Blossom from Eileen's Reaper that Jinmu wouldn't be able to match. You can even combo Rek's Grav with Eileen's Blossom to secure the second point. Basically, Milk Tea could have taken advantage of their massive ult charge lead in this fight if they played their cards just a little better. At the end of this fight, Rek was able to eliminate Bellisria and stabilize, keeping his charge. This is nice for keeping momentum going into the next fight, because, you know, it's hard to use Graviton if you don't have the charge to deal damage and follow up on it after all. Milk Tea engage from the high ground, this time opening with Kitsune, as well as a bubble onto Eileen's Reaper. Rek notices Jinmu has committed his Wraith and knows he has Death Blossom, so he makes the decision to solo Grav and eliminate the Reaper Blossom threat. Rock literally put everything into saving Jinmu. Bubble, Suzu, and Wuyang Wave, but nah, he is dead. Unfortunately, Eileen is traded right afterwards, so it's a 4v4. It is Rock's turn with their Kitsune. They push forward and deal a lot of damage to Rek's Zarya. He kites the best he can, but falls very low, calling for a rare use of Tidal Blast. Unknown saves Rek's life by using Tidal Blast as more of a healing utility rather than an aggressive utility. Unfortunately, Rek fumbles badly here because he gets way too overconfident with the Tidal and he runs directly into Rock, resulting in his death. Here, you've just got to use that Tidal Blast to live and stabilize. Keeping Zarya charge is a lot more important than whatever the heck that was. So yeah, Milk Tea may have just fumbled their ult advantage to the fullest extent. Rock have 4, Milk Tea, well, it's not looking promising. We have a bit of an ult desert out here. With that said, Rock opened with an early Tidal Blast onto Flora, just like they had done before, and this time it does land onto Unknown. The Suzu from Recall was just a moment late. But Recall still dunks on Flora, trading him out immediately afterwards. The Flora versus Recall B-plot on this map is absolute peak. I'm having so much fun writing this video. Milk Tea walk across the bridge after that scuffle, with Rek and Eileen performing their usual soft hit routine to gain some charge while swinging the corner to face Rock. Milk Tea do get a little overzealous with their second hit though, deciding to just go for a straight up direct hit into the center of Rock. Eileen does get bubble, but he doesn't last long, dying with Wraith available. Died so fast he couldn't react in time to use it. In these videos, highlighting the good is always fun, but struggles like this one here on second point can really show what kinds of plays might not work with a composition, which are interesting to observe in their own right. While Milk Tea struggled in the previous fight, Recall had slowly been building up to his Kitsune, which would be ready soon. Milk Tea were going to need to play for that as their win con, but it would be difficult up against Bellisria's Grav. Luckily, Bellisria makes a slight mistake. He pops Grav on Rex Zarya and Eileen's Reaper very early on, but neglected the fact that Milk Tea have Bubble, Wraith, and, they have Suzu too. With these cooldowns, Milk Tea were actually able to keep Eileen's Reaper in particular alive through the Graviton, rendering it worthless for Rock. With the playing field evened up and Recall outbuilding Fami in Kitsune charge, Milk Tea once again enter a state of advantage. Eileen does get a little ahead of himself and TP's in, only to die a half second away from Wraith. Come on, Eileen. But Recall is not losing this fight. He drops that Kitsune, and Rock don't have their own Kitsune to use in return. Milk Tea focused down Bellisria Zarya, with Insane's bullet shot dealing the final blow, and then Rock try and trade with Flora blinking the whole way in to pulse Recall, again, only for Recall to just Suzu it, again. And this is the third time, by the way, that Flora has tried to pulse Recall, and the third failure. Milk Tea move on to the third point, but are now lacking in terms of time, with only 2 minutes to make it to the end of the map. Recall starts in an off angle on the left side, but for the first time, Flora actually gets a small win, managing to force Recall's Suzu and TP without having to commit his own Recall. That's pretty confusing, isn't it? That's probably pretty confusing. Recall didn't force Recall. Someone should really stop these players from choosing these names. Milk Tea get a bit ahead of themselves by going for a super early Tidal Blast hit straight away. Eileen gets in there and gets a bit of value, but Rock have all of their cooldowns, and we're generally pretty safe. Probably not worthwhile to go for, since the rest of Milk Tea weren't able to follow up anyways. Rock took their turn next, bubbling Jinmu for a little Reaper hit. Milk Tea turned to focus him, and as soon as he's out, Milk Tea take their turn and throw the Graviton on Bellisria and Jinmu. Bellisria dies, but Jinmu gets Suzu and Tidal Blast, which keep him alive long enough to kill Eileen, who... Oh, you ulted that. You just ulted that. Milk Tea would get another fight, but they wouldn't pull through. We did get more development for the B-plot though, with Recall and Flora kinda just doing their own thing with a little duel split from everyone else. Something so funny about Flora just specifically chasing down Recall this entire fight. Oh yeah, and Flora pulses Recall again, only for it to be Suzu'd. Again, but I guess Rock still held. So we move on to Milk Tea's defense, and they've now managed to force the exact matchup they want. Zarya Reaper versus Zarya Reaper. Rock aren't gonna change it up. Probably pretty scared of losing at this point, since, again, we are in the lower bracket here, with Stockholm World Finals on the line. I would be pretty worried too. The round begins with Recall on his own little adventure on Kiriko on the side lane. Starting split like this to deal some poke and min-max Kitsune ult charge is pretty normal. Jinmu's Reaper scares Recall away, and then Recall actually manages to force Suzu out of Fami and land a headshot on Flora before being forced away. Meanwhile, for Rock, Jinmu's first bubble soft hit went pretty well, managing to collect some charge for Bellisria's Zarya. But the second hit, well, that one did not go as well. Bellisria was climbing the stairs to try and look to push high ground personally, and Jinmu TP'd in too early. Jinmu also tried to go for this without even having Wraith available yet, that's brave, but this kind of shows you that if you're off by like half a second with Reaper Zarya, the whole thing falls apart. The communication between those two players is more important than anything else in this entire composition. Early fight, it can be argued that the Reaper's comms are the most important since he'll be communicating to the Zarya what he needs, and then the Zarya's target calls become more important later in the fight because she's the late fight carry with all of her charge and damage output. In many compositions, the person who is dealing the most damage is often the one whose calls are the most important at that point in time. Another good example is Zen Brig Ball compositions back in Overwatch 1. Zenyatta was actually the person you'd want to listen to the most, since whoever he has Discord on and is doing damage to is most likely to die. I think it's important to emphasize how comm structure changes based on composition in Overwatch, because it's not like each role, tank, flex DPS, main support, etc., has a predefined amount of importance in comms that is unchanging. Well, back to the game, and we have Bellisria getting absolutely bulldozed by Milk Tea, who no longer have a Reaper in their way. This is great for Milk Tea since Bellisria's charge is set right back to 0, and Rock must start from scratch next fight. Flora on the side of Rock starts off by forcing Recall's TP. Now, Milk Tea are playing really far up, like dangerously far up, to the point that it's a little absurd. You have Eileen's Reaper holding a very, very forward position, and then you have Unknown's Wu Yang who is actually trying to hold this corner with Eileen. For the record, this is just stupid. I don't think this is justifiable by any metric, and Flora rightfully places a pulse on Unknown's ass and takes him down, finally obtaining a pulse bomb kill. Milk Tea commit their Kitsune in a desperate attempt to stabilize, but this was honestly not worth it whatsoever, and Rock still win the fight anyways. Now, Milk Tea are just at an ultimate disadvantage for the next fight. If you're wondering why playing forward was so bad there, I think it's really just that, 1, it's not a sustainable position. If you are going to hold it, that'd be a temporary hold that you back out of. Milk Tea overstayed. And 2, even if you wanted to try a temporary hold and executed it correctly, it'd still kind of suck for Insane on Freya in particular. On Freya, he doesn't have any good LOS of that fight at the first corner. He has to peek down a very narrow sightline for first corner, so he'd rather play for the second corner, where he has a lot more room to work with, so it's just not worth it either way. For the retake to try and prevent a first point cap, Milk Tea used Tidal Blast on Eileen's Reaper quite early on, but Rock are able to respond with a Kitsune that Milk Tea cannot match. Eileen overextends with Tidal Blast and is caught out. He unfortunately kinda just died with his Wraith available, so it was a silly mistake. Meanwhile, Flora finally gets the better of Recall, dueling with him on the side of the map and winning. You know, that's big wins for Flora, guys. Big wins for Flora. Rock move on to the second point. Flora isn't done yet though. No, after last round, he has no chill. He finds Recall's Kiriko yet again on a flank, and even though he TPs away, Flora blinks right over that wall, no hesitation, and sends Recall's ass straight to spawn before taking his leave. Just don't mention the pulse bomb. That didn't happen. It didn't happen. It's fake news. Didn't happen. Rock make a mistake though. Bellisria solo grabs Rex Zarya after Flora kills Recall, and yes, Rek does die, but here's the thing. Rek was probably gonna die either way. Even if he didn't, Rock were still guaranteed cart progress from the Kiriko kill. Milk Tea had to back out or die after that, so Bellisria using Grav now means that Milk Tea get to take the next fight at an ult advantage, and have a much better chance of holding on to the second point. In my opinion, this one Grav right here ruined Rock's momentum. This was the turning point in this round. Rock weren't completely screwed though, they had plenty more to work with. On the side of Milk Tea, Rek completes his first bubble rotation using one on Eileen and one on himself. Right afterwards though, he was caught off guard by Jinmu's Reaper, who had TP'd above and dropped with Death Blossom, supported by a bubble from Bellisria. Rek's Zarya dying, as well as Eileen's Reaper falling to Bellisria afterwards, meant Milk Tea would have to take on a near impossible retake, lacking a majority of their damage output. Many teams would simply give second point and go next, and that's not a bad decision, but Unknown Wu Yang, after taking down Fami's Kiriko, decided that the fight was still winnable and placed the Tidal Blast on Insane's Freya to push forward. Insane on Freya tried to take out Lengsa's Wu Yang but was unsuccessful, and then Lengsa uses Tidal Blast on Bellisria's Zarya, which was interesting timing for sure, but I think Rock just wanted to close out the fight. Insane lived long enough on point, and then Recall and Kiriko sacrificed himself to touch card, all to just barely buy enough time for Rek and Eileen, the Zarya Reaper duo, to return from spawn to try and turn the fight. Rek throws down the Graviton, of which Rock cannot match. Thank you, Bellisria. Eileen uses Blossom, killing both Jinmu and Bellisria, who were caught, and now it is Rock who are left without their key damage duo. Fami on Kiriko tries to salvage this with Kitsune, but Recall has returned with his own Kitsune. So Rock realize that they cannot win and retreat. Milk Tea, they actually won that. Unfortunately, that one fight wouldn't bring them the victory they wanted, and in the next, Flora would single-handedly solo the backline of Milk Tea. He forces the Suzu out of recall and then pulses at the feet of a No, managing to get the kill. After he recalls, he kills Recall. I love that name. And then Rock move on to the third and final point on this map with 3 minutes to move the cart 78 meters. Rek and Eileen work together to open up this next fight as usual. Eileen TPs in, receives bubble, and manages to force the Suzu out of Fami, as well as a bubble out of Bellisria. Eileen chills for a moment with Wraith before going for one last bit of damage with another bubble from Rek and then TPing away. Rock take their turn next, running Jinmu's Reaper at Rek, who needed to back away and kite. Eileen takes an off angle for the re-engage and unexpectedly comes across Bellisria, who was sitting in this little space separate from his team. By the time Bellisria realized what was shooting him, he was already dead. An unchecked Reaper directly in your face really hurts. This is great for Milk Tea since they just won the fight without using anything. Rock could have just run Milk Tea down with their Graviton and Death Blossom, but now Milk Tea have a chance to poke a while longer to build ults and put up more of a fight. Thank you, Bellisria. Even with this temporary save, Rock are going to come back into the next fight with Pulse, Blossom, Grav, Tidal, and close to Kitsune as well. While Milk Tea are working towards building their Grav and Kitsune in particular that they need to be able to match that and potentially win. The Grav from Bellisria is by far the most problematic for Milk Tea, but they did find a solution, which was to use Eileen as a sacrificial pawn. Milk Tea play first, understanding that if they let Bellisria Grav on his own terms, they'll simply lose. A No throws Tidal Blast onto Eileen's Reaper, and Eileen charges at Bellisria, scaring him into solo grabbing. Eileen receives bubbles from Rek and uses his Wraith, but either way, he dies. This might seem like a decent ult from Bellisria, but no! Sacrificing Eileen here saved Milk Tea from taking a fight that they wouldn't be able to win. Thank you, Bellisria. Recall does dunk on Flora's Tracer, who had overextended, but that is besides the point. What really matters is that Milk Tea have Zarya charge and are able to completely back off after the Grav and stabilize. They didn't overcommit to save Eileen, so now they can take a very slow 4v5 and now 4v4 fight while they wait for Eileen to return, which isn't actually going to take very long because of the spawn advantage. It's easy to hold the archway and buy time for Eileen, so getting the Grav at Bellisria was totally worth it. Rock used their Kitsune, looking to close the fight out, but now Recall has had enough time to build his own Kitsune, so it's an even fight. And wow, would you look at that, Eileen has already returned, and with Flora nearly there, it's about to go right back to a 5v5. Only now it is Milk Tea, not Rock, who have their Grav ready to go. Eileen receives a bubble and charges forward, forcing bubbles out of Bellisria to protect himself. Rek follows up with a Grav to finish off a resource-strained Bellisria, and Milk Tea secure the fight. Well, Jinmu also throws away his Death Blossom with whatever this was. Ouch. Only one fight remains, and Milk Tea decide to replicate their previous play, looking to play first with Death Blossom this time. Eileen receives the bubble, and then walks forward into the room at Rock's core, using Blossom to force both bubbles, Suzu, and Wave out of Rock. After depleting Rock's CDs, Eileen decides to be a little greedy and keeps going. He wasn't able to find anything, but on the way out, he gets a bubble from Rek that saves him and gives him the chance to find the final key pick that Milk Tea needed, Fami's Kiriko, who was 60% to Kitsune, and he dies first.
一个裂空，这边还能再摸一下吗？提莫换了个法老之音过来，法老之音做不了事啊！裂空再踩最后一下，真的非常能摸，但是第2号选手呢？没了，我们恭喜Milk Tea，3v2战胜了 LC， 挺进了下一轮。
Bellisria able to find a No on the way out, but it does not matter. Off the back of their Reaper Zarya composition, Milk Tea are going to upset Rock Esports in the lower bracket, take them out of the China playoffs, and I don't think we're gonna see a Team CC versus Rock matchup. Instead, maybe we gotta get ready for Milk Tea. Milk Tea's victory over ROC put an end to ROC's run in OWCS China for the 2025 season, and placed Milk Tea only 2 victories away from making it to the World Finals. Milk Tea didn't even have a victory graphic prepared to post on social media after the fact because, well, they didn't expect to win. In the lower bracket semifinal, where Milk Tea would face off against the 4th seed, YNB Esports, they would flip the script yet again, taking them down in another incredible 5-map series. Unfortunately for Milk Tea, China only have 2 LAN slots. This is because China performed the worst of all the major regions at the previous LAN event, so one of their slots for World Finals was sacrificed in order to send the Japan vs Pacific winner to Stockholm, who ended up being Varel. This basically means that in an alternate universe where Weibo performs better at the previous LAN and doesn't get eliminated in the group stage, Milk Tea would have been going to World Finals and would have qualified. But even after securing top 3, Milk Tea were left to face Team CC, the 3rd seed, who were looking stronger than ever. They were the ones who sent ROC to the lower bracket in the first place. Team CC put an end to Milk Tea's run with a quick 3-0. The reason why Team CC was so much more problematic for Milk Tea was probably because both teams are actually pretty good Zarya Reaper teams. So Team CC could mirror the composition and, well, they could just play it better. With Team CC's win, they locked down the 2nd and final slot for World Finals for the China region. Milk Tea may not have made it to Stockholm, but they walked away with around 10,000 USD for their 3rd place finish. If they were knocked out by ROC, they only would have made 6,000 USD, so that's a pretty significant difference, especially because that money goes even further in China. I hope you enjoyed this one. I love being able to talk about the China region again, this time not in the context of poor tournament design. And if you have ever a chance, make sure to tune into OWCS China and actually check it out yourself. I'll be co-streaming it next year as well, so if you need an English broadcast, I've got you covered. Thanks for watching. Make sure to check out my Twitch, 2nd channel, and take a peek at Nightmares merch if you're looking for jerseys and a team to support going into 2026. Since I'm done with co-streams for the most part this year, I should have a bit more time to dedicate to videos, so I hope I can get more content out to all of you soon.